All right, here we go. Welcome into the Stone Shield Show. We are here. We are live. It is Tuesday, March 10th. Appreciate everybody out there making us a part of your day. Lots of options out there and lots of stuff that we need to get to here on a Tuesday. The Cincinnati Bengals, well, they legally tampered yesterday and got off to a slow start. I was a little bit concerned there at first. I'll be honest with you. Fired out a tweet saying, yeah, it doesn't appear the Bengals are legally tampering. And about an hour after that, they made a couple of signings. Bryan Cook, I consider that a splashy move. Honestly, I really do. You look at this free agent class as a whole, was there any real, splashy moves out there? Maybe not, but for the Cincinnati Bengals, signing the top safety that was available in free agency, who happens to be a hometown guy as well, kind of a cherry on top there, I'll consider that a splashy move. We'll talk Bryan Cook on today's show. Also, a little bit after that, yesterday afternoon, the Bengals made the decision to sign Boye Mafe. At first, I saw Draymond Jones, he go off the board. He was one of the first guys signed yesterday. He's going to the New England Patriots, and he only signed for like $39 million, 3 years. I'm sitting there going, oh my goodness, if you're the Cincinnati Bengals, why in the world would you not do that? Well, they went the younger route, they went the more expensive route, and they rolled the dice a little bit with a traitsy guy. Bengals obviously fall in love with those types of players, particularly at that position in Boye Mafe. I'm not quite as excited about the Mafe signing as the Bryan Cook signing, but that by no means is a reason not to be excited at all by Boye Mafe, as he now will have a much bigger role. Kind of fell back into a rotational role in Seattle. Mike McDonald en route to a Super Bowl. Now he's going to be that guy opposite Myles Murphy. He is that too at that edge rusher spot. Shamar Stewart certainly will have a role that he'll carve out for himself, but he's your guy out there on more downs than not, and we'll see what he's capable of doing. 3 years, $60 million for him. Salute to Duke Tobin. Right, looked like he was asleep at the wheel there at the beginning, but he went out, made some remarks at the Combine. We all kind of rolled our eyes at him a little bit, as if to say, yeah, we've heard this before, but are you really going to do anything? Two big moves yesterday, and hopefully a versatile combo linebacker kind of role. Hopefully we see that guy go off the board. Still, by the way, plenty of quality names out there. Still some guys at that linebacker spot. Still a couple of guys at the interior defensive line. Logan Hall, as we're doing this live here just past 11 o'clock on a Tuesday, still available at this particular juncture. Bengals also had their name in the ring for a couple other big-name guys, which I think is intriguing. I don't think it's all fairy dust. I do think there was a real world where they tried to get a guy like JFM, where they tried to get a guy like Devin Lloyd, so we'll spend a little bit of time talking about that on today's show as well. We'll throw out a couple of names that are still available. The two top linebackers are guys we've talked about in depth here at the show. Kaden Elliss from Atlanta, Leo Chenal from Kansas City. Could those guys, one of those guys, potentially be a Cincinnati Bengal by day's end? Lots of free agency stuff that we need to discuss. We'll also go around the NFL a little bit here on today's show. A couple of quarterbacks moving teams. Malik Willis, he's going to Miami. That regime, they come over for Green Bay, and they're like, you know what? We know this guy. He was the backup to Jordan Love. Played really well when he was called into duty last year and the year before. We'll roll the dice with him as our starting quarterback here in 2026. We'll see how that works out for Miami. We'll talk Malik Willis. Tua Tagovailoa, honestly, being Tua Tagovailoa right now is a pretty good gig, right? So you're getting paid $50+ million from the Miami Dolphins, and then you're going to get $1 million from your new team. It's going to be the Atlanta Falcons, right? I think there was a second there where it's like, Tua, you might be on the Jets, you might be on the Cardinals, his career might be cooked. Nope, he's going to an indoor stadium, the worst division in football, with Kevin Stefanski. And, I think they'll probably want to move forward with Michael Penix, but with his injury, Tua's going to get a ton of snaps this offseason. I think there's a world where he does beat out Michael Penix. So the two lefties there in Atlanta, I mean, I don't know what Stefanski's doing. I mean, he loves short left-handed quarterbacks, right? Tua's, just a much better version of Dylan Gabriel, but I think they're similar players to some capacity. So everybody wants to crown Kevin Stefanski like he's up there with O'Connell and some of these other top coaches. But some of his quarterback decisions have made me scratch my head a little bit. But good for Tua. He lands on his feet in Atlanta, and I don't think that could have gone much better for Tua Tagovailoa. So we'll talk about him. Kenneth Walker going to the Chiefs. Look, Brett Veach, Andy Reid, those boys, they know what they're doing in Kansas City. Much smarter than I, but okay. Hey, he's a good player, but you're going to pay him $43 million? That shows me that they don't think Jeremiah Love's going to be available to him at number 9, which I guess he's probably not. But spending that much money on a running back, I don't know. And, when you look at his career as a whole, as far as some of the pass-catching stuff out of the backfield for Kenneth Walker, the numbers aren't bad, but I don't view him as kind of that versatile back, right? He's not an Alvin Kamara by any stretch of the imagination, right? This is a guy that he's running. He's running in between the tackles. He can get outside. He's got great speed. But as far as being a threat in the pass game, I don't know, and that's something that Andy Reid likes to have in his back pocket. So I don't know if I love that signing for Kansas City, to be completely honest with you. I do love Mike Evans to San Francisco. Look out. Kyle Shanahan, Brock Purdy, George Kittle coming back from injury, right? Obviously running the ball with Christian McCaffrey, that makes a heck of a lot of sense. $60 million over the course of 3 years. Mike Evans still has good football ahead of him. But, his hamstring with that substation, next to their facility. We'll see how that works out. But he is going to the Niners. Michael Pittman going to the Steelers in a trade. Alec Pierce gets a big bag. What was the deal for him? 4 years, $116 million. Good for the Cincinnati Bearcat, Alec Pierce. He's clearly the one now in Indianapolis. We'll see if it's Daniel Jones throwing him the football or not. So lots of stuff going on. Moving parts all over the place. The Raiders were super aggressive. The Titans were super aggressive there as well. And I'm always a firm believer in free agency. You kind of got to toe that line a little bit. You don't want to be a no-show. You don't want to do nothing. But some of the teams that go out there and just sign a ton of players usually doesn't equate to success right away. We'll see if that proves true or not with the Raiders and Titans, obviously two bottom feeders in the league over the past few years, but they were really, really active yesterday. As I mentioned, lots of names still out there. Day 2 today here on March 10th. But appreciate everybody hanging out with us here on the Tuesday. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done so already. By the way, we'll talk, if we have time, UC Bearcats. I think they play at 3 o'clock today. Tip-off 3 o'clock. They got to win this game against Utah. 11.5-point favorites, round 1 of the Big 12 tournament. If they're going to play every single day or if they keep winning, and you got to get 2 wins here if you're Wes Miller and you're trying to keep your job, obviously trying to get to the tournament as well. But you got to put yourself in a situation when you're facing Arizona here in a couple of days, right? You got to beat Utah. You got to beat Central Florida and get yourself into that game. Do we feel good about them playing Tommy Lloyd and the Wildcats? No. But you got to find yourself in that game if you're Cincinnati. Game 1, the Big 12 tournament, a couple hours, 3 o'clock, ESPN+. But subscribe if you haven't done so already. We got live shows coming at you left and right as well. Red season right around the corner. Spring training way underway. At this point, I'll be down in Goodyear in a couple of weeks checking that out. And here at the end of the month, opening day here in Cincinnati. So subscribe. Best Reds content there is here at Chatterbox Sports. Nick Kirby, Trace Fowler, Craig Sandlin, Mike Hart, and others. Got you covered here at the channel. We'll have some Bengals videos, right? Reed Mouse and I did kind of an emergency live show yesterday after the 2 signings. We're like, Bryan Cook, that's a big enough name. We'll do a live show. That podcast is out. Appreciate everyone that joined in for that. And then we got my show every single day, 11 to noon. Maybe at some point we'll increase to 2 hours, but for the foreseeable future, it'll be 11 to noon here. Chatterbox every single day, Monday through Friday, year-round. We got you covered. Bengals, Reds, Bearcats, NFL. Shoot, I've been talking PGA Tour, Major League Baseball, NBA, college hoops, March Madness, you name it, we got it here at the show. So help us out, help me out. Find the podcast, leave me a 5-star review. Really does go a long way wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, iHeart, you name it. Tap in live, that's great. But if you can't, totally get it. It's the middle of the day on a work day. Check out the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. So the show goes out in podcast form there as well. But appreciate everyone, as always, hanging out with us here on a Tuesday. And let's kind of dive in to some of these signings for the Cincinnati Bengals. So as I talked about when we came on here, I truly expected the Bengals to be aggressive this year in free agency. Now, when you're talking about the Cincinnati Bengals, they've had multiple instances over the past couple of years where they could have been aggressive, and it probably would have been the right decision for them to be aggressive, but it didn't necessarily surprise me when they weren't, right? I truly believed, even knowing everything we know about the Cincinnati Bengals, that they were going to be aggressive yesterday, and they didn't get out to a fast start. If you remember this time last year, what was the first thing they did? It's like, oh, B.J. Hill, let's give him a ton of money as a veteran guy, and let's keep him here in Cincinnati. Oh, let's get Joseph Osai on this prove-it contract. And then really all they did after that, was getting T.J. Slayton and then getting a linebacker, Oren Burks, from Philly. And it's like that was kind of it. And then you get Reisner late, Lucas Patrick late, right? So they didn't really do a whole lot last year. A little bit different this year. And, again, it opened at 12. There was some stuff rolling in as we were live on the show yesterday. And a couple hours went by, and I was like, are we serious right now? And you're seeing Draymond Jones go off the board, very affordable contract, right? You miss on JFM. But not long after you missed on JFM, the news broke that you were bringing in Bryan Cook. And I do think the Bengals actually were interested in JFM, and we're kind of sniffing around there. But we talk about that position a lot. Defensive tackle, especially this year as far as free agency and the NFL draft goes, not many elite DTs just walking around, right? Those guys, they're few and far between, and they're all under contract for the most part. But JFM was the one outlier. Teams were getting in bidding wars. He went for $40+ million was his total agreement. I don't know off the top of my head exactly what it was, but he's going to Tennessee, pairing him with Jeffrey Simmons, which is, they're doing something a little bit there with Robert Saleh and those boys on defense. But the Bengals had interest. Ultimately, he decides to go elsewhere and not be a part of the Cincinnati Bengals. But they pivoted quickly, and they said, you know what, we're not messing around here. We are getting Bryan Cook. And I said this on the live show yesterday. As far as a splash move, right? So we were talking about this with Goodberry last week. You look at the whole free agency crop, and I think certainly Carolina, that was a splash move to get Jalen Phillips, an overpay. We'll see how it works out for him. 26 years old, has had 2 severe injuries already in the NFL. But as far as the Cincinnati Bengals go, to go at a specific position, a position in which you have devalued ever since Jesse Bates walked out of the door, right? And you say, you know what, we are paying a premium for this guy. We're paying him $40 million over the course of 3 years, paying him a ton of money in year one. I think it's like $18 million in year one for Bryan Cook, and we're bringing him in here. And Duke Tobin, Zach Taylor, Brown family, they deserve a lot of credit. We give them a lot of crap for some of the stuff they do, how they operate, but this is an outstanding move to get Bryan Cook to come in here and be your starting safety, one of your starting safeties next year for the Cincinnati Bengals, right? They had tried this approach, right, ever since Bates left of let's just try this cheap guy that's, maybe a diamond in the rough guy, or let's bring back, a guy we all loved in Von Bell. That strategy didn't work, and we told them, right? We kept saying, this ain't working. We all knew it, and it's just refreshing to see that, they understood it didn't work either, and they didn't try to keep doing the same thing over and over again and hope for a different result. They said, we're going to pivot. We're going to value this position. We're going to bring in a guy that has had success over the course of 4 years, has been a really good player, has some rings on his finger as well with the Kansas City Chiefs. Local guy, hometown guy, is just kind of a cherry on top. Let's bring in Bryan Cook, and I think everybody should be really fired up about him. It's free agency. None of these players are perfect players, right? Very few perfect players in the National Football League, right? So I'm not going to sit here and say Bryan Cook's a perfect player, but he's peaking at the right time. He's entering his prime. He's gotten better each and every year since he has been in the NFL, and he's been a part of a regime that knows what they're doing. Right? This isn't a guy coming from Vegas or coming from Cleveland. This guy's coming from Kansas City. And we all in this city don't have any love for the Kansas City Chiefs, but we can still look at them and say, well, yeah, they know what they're doing, right? That's pretty evident. A couple of stats here on Bryan Cook. The Bengals led the NFL in missed tackle rate last season. I'm not sure if you had heard that or not already, but they had. Missed tackle rate just through the roof for Al Golden in that defense. Unfortunately, it's been an issue for several years, right? Even when Lou Anarumo was calling the shots defensively, Bengals couldn't tackle. Over the course of the past 2 years, Bryan Cook has only missed 11 tackles and ranked 7th best among all safeties in missed tackle rate last year. He's only missed 22 total tackles in his 4 NFL seasons. He will replace Geno Stone, who missed 23 tackles last season alone. This guy played 4 years in Kansas City. He missed 22 tackles. He is taking Geno Stone's spot. Geno Stone missed more tackles in one season than Bryan Cook has throughout the entirety of his 4-year career to this point. That's about as big of an upgrade as you can get, right? And Al Golden has said, just basically has emphasized the point as far as if you want to get to where you want to get to defensively, your DB's got to be able to tackle. Right? They got to be able to tackle. And the Bengals safeties over the course of the past few years have not been able to tackle. Jordan Battle throughout the first half of last year, he was just as bad as Geno Stone from a missed tackling perspective. Cleaned it up in the second half, which is why the Bengals wrapped their arms around him at the combine. They're rolling the dice with Battle going into a contract season. We'll see what he's capable of doing. But getting a guy that can tackle and getting a guy that has some speed and that's a rangy guy and that can be that post safety and also can come down into the box, can complement Jordan Battle, lots of reason to be really, really excited with Bryan Cook coming in. He started every game in which he was active over the course of the past 3 years. 47 starts for the Chiefs. Reputation all-around safety, as I mentioned, comfortable playing forward in the box, ranging deep in the post there as well. And as I mentioned, they kind of got in that bidding war with JFM, and then they pivoted quickly after that. When they didn't get him, he goes to the Titans, and they bring in Bryan Cook. So if you're not familiar, if you just kind of watch the Bengals and that's about it, maybe you don't watch college football either, you will remember Bryan Cook for one thing. In the 2022 AFC Championship game, so that would have been his rookie season, he was starting for the Kansas City Chiefs, and Joe Burrow threw an interception late in that game. I think it was like 6 or 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and it was like a 3rd and short, and Burrow took a shot. It ended up not being like a killer, but anytime you turn it over in the fourth quarter, AFC Championship on the road, not a good situation. But he was throwing it up to T, double coverage on like a 3rd and short, and it got deflected by Bryan Cook, and it was an unbelievable play by him. Cook actually was really struggling in that game. They kind of were picking on him to some degree, but he got his hand on the football. One of his teammates was able to pick it off, and then T made the tackle, and then the Chiefs had the ball in a tie game with, again, like 6 or 7 minutes left. So all Bengals fans will remember that play. Obviously, that was not ideal. But he really has gotten better and better and better since that moment, right? As a rookie, he was thrown in there and he was playing a lot. Wasn't perfect, but he really has grown and developed over the course of the past few years and has turned himself into a really good safety. And that's why he's getting the payday in which he's getting there at that position. So the question, of course, becomes at that safety position specifically, is Cincinnati going to look to add to that room or not? We talk about them devaluing that position. I think for the most part, the Bengals got really fortunate as far as their health goes last year. Now, you might look at that and say, you're absolutely crazy. Well, 2 of their top 4 players were hurt for the majority of the year, Joe Burrow and Trey Hendrickson. But beyond that, right, I mean, Geno Stone was not a good football player, but he was available. Jordan Battle, available. Your corners, DJ and Dax, who have had injuries throughout their career to this point, they were very available there as well. So my point is the depth of your DBs didn't really get tested a whole lot. Obviously, CTB went down, but he was going to get benched anyway, right? So will you see them add to that safety position or not? We still don't know what the deal is on Tyson Anderson, as we're doing this live, if he's going to be coming back, if he is signed elsewhere. He's a free agent, right? Do you trust P.J. Jules or Dejon Anthony to come in and play meaningful snaps? I certainly don't. We'll see if the Bengals do or not. So I think there's a narrative out there that, they took Bryan Cook, Caleb Downs is off the board. I don't think that's necessarily true. Now, we've gone back and forth on this for several weeks. Is he going to be available at 10? Is he not going to be available at 10? This doesn't change my mindset as far as picking him if he is available at number 10. He is still my pick, right? Out of anybody. If Caleb Downs is there at 10, you still take him, even after this acquisition of Bryan Cook. Now, like I said, Jordan Battle, this is, it's contract year for him, and if he doesn't show significant improvement, I'm ready to let him walk after 2026. And also you're seeing kind of that big nickel position in the NFL. Now, Caleb Downs doesn't have the size to play that role like an Eamon Worry for the Seahawks. And, I mean, Kyle Hamilton just does so many things, but I guess to some degree, Kyle Hamilton in Baltimore as well. But I'm fine with him kind of being that big nickel, right? Play closer to the line of scrimmage, and you just kind of move him around like a chess piece, and ultimately could have all 3 of those guys out there on the field at the same time, talking about Cook, Battle, and Caleb Downs. So just because they got Bryan Cook doesn't take me off of Caleb Downs, but as far as adding another safety in free agency, probably feels like they're done at that position. But in the draft, I absolutely would still look to add a safety. Now, you don't want to reach on one early if Downs isn't there, but do you revisit that as on a day 3 pick, or if McNeil Warren happens to slide a little bit from Toledo in the 2nd round, something like that? I think that's definitely something you should still consider if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. So Bryan Cook, first move yesterday, and not long after that, they addressed the edge rusher spots, right? And they get a guy in Boye Mafe. As I mentioned when we first came on here, I was a little disappointed that, Draymond Jones went for such an affordable price. And I was like, I kind of felt like he was a Bengal. That was my prediction. That's a guy that I wanted. Ohio State guys bounced around a lot, played well for Baltimore after they traded for him last year. But they go the younger route and they go the more expensive route. And I'm not going to sit here and complain that they got a little bit aggressive and are paying a guy $60 million. You look at the stats for Boye Mafe, and he's never had a double-digit sack season. And you look at the sacks specifically last year, and you're like, well, that's not great. He was playing like 50% of the snaps for Seattle. They added some pieces along that defensive line. Obviously, DeMarcus Lawrence, him coming in from Dallas. I think people just kind of wrote that off as his career's kind of done. He'll go to Seattle. He'll be whatever. No, he's a huge reason why they won the Super Bowl. They had another edge guy opposite him, had some guys in the interior. So Boye was just kind of phased out a little bit, and I don't think that is an indictment on him. I think just the guys around him, like they won the world championship. We saw how great their defense was. And now he's going to have an opportunity to come here in Cincinnati and play a bigger role. And when you do more research on Boye Mafe, it's like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense, right? This is a guy that Cincinnati would really, like. Traitsy guy, is an athletic freak, not as freaky as a guy like Shamar Stewart, but has some production, and they're kind of rolling the dice on him, saying he's going to come in here to Cincinnati, have a bigger role, and they feel good about him executing in a bigger role because he was good in a smaller role in Seattle. It's really Trey Hendrickson 2.0. What they're trying to do. When he was in New Orleans, had the one really good year that last year before he was a free agent. Bengals saw what they liked. Remember, Cam Jordan was kind of in his prime back then, so it was like, well, is Trey Hendrickson really that good, or is he just reaping the benefits of playing around some really good guys on that defensive front for New Orleans? Bengals rolled the dice. Best free agent signing in the history of the franchise. I think it's pretty obvious that they're trying to replicate that a little bit here with Boye Mafe. And I think there's a lot of reason to be optimistic that he can come in here and do some good things. He's going to be the starter opposite Myles Murphy, right? Those two guys are going to be your starters, which I think takes some pressure off Shamar Stewart. He's still got to flash here in year two, and he's still got to produce. Not just flash, he's got to produce in year two. But if you went into training camp and, maybe added a guy in the second round of the draft but didn't, pay $60 million for an edge rusher in free agency, you'd be looking at Shamar saying, yeah, your first year was awful. You had the injury issues. You didn't play good football, and you're going to be our two behind Myles Murphy, who, by the way, he finally just had a good year. We're not all sold that he's going to have another good year in 2026. And that would have been a very difficult spot to find yourself in if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. So Joseph Ossai leaves, which that was a sigh of relief for me. Again, it has no disrespect towards Joseph Ossai. His effort, I appreciate the heck out of his efforts. I think he lost himself a couple of dollars not being available at the end of the year, had the injury, missed the past few games to close out the 2025 season. But he goes to New York, and I think the Bengals upgrade. It's safe to say at that position. They're certainly paying more now with Boye Mafe getting that $60 million deal. But former second-round pick out of Minnesota and has been a part of winning, which, maybe that's not the most important thing in the world, but I value that a lot. I really do. And you're taking a guy from Kansas City and a guy from Seattle. Well, there's rings on the fingers of both of those guys, multiple in the hand, of course, of Bryan Cook. And it's something I talked about with Reed on the live show yesterday. You look at this Bengals team, and, they went on those two playoff runs. It was great. It was magical. It was glorious. You're looking around on this roster, and you're going, well, yeah, you got T. Jamar and Joe. But as far as playoff experience beyond that, you got a bunch of young guys. Like, it's not been there, done that. These guys are out the door, right? It's a different team than it was when you were going on those runs back in 21 and 22. So I think adding some guys that have been in the playoffs, have played in the postseason, understand what it's like to play championship football is really huge for Cincinnati, regardless of the talent that they bring to the table as football players. Just the experience of being in those moments, I think, is going to go a long way for Cincinnati. And, I think these signings are something that a Bengals fan should be really, really excited about. Is there a world where the Boye Mafe thing's a whiff? Yeah, there is, but that's life in the NFL. That's life in free agency, right? You want to take a guy that has been in the league, has been a part of winning, has flashed a little bit, and ask him to go to a bigger role. We'll see if he's able to take it on or not, right? And he's not going to be surrounded by the talent that he was in Seattle, right? He's going to be asked to be one of those guys along with Myles Murphy, and we'll see if they address the interior today or when that ultimately shakes out. But the Boye Mafe thing, it might not work. Now, the Bryan Cook thing, I think that's kind of a, like he might get hurt or maybe, doesn't have quite as good of a year as he had last year, but you fix that to some degree, right? That safety position, you have confidence that he's going to significantly upgrade that room, right? Because you look at how bad it was with Geno Stone. Like, if he, like, let's say Bryan Cook has a horrible year, well, a horrible year for Bryan Cook is still a much better year than the Geno Stone experience, right? So at the safety position, I'm not worried about it blowing up in their face. Could the Boye Mafe thing blow up in their face a little bit? It could. But, they're paying top-of-the-line money, $60 million for a guy that produced, played in big moments, Seattle Seahawk, has the traits, has the athleticism. I mean, turn on the tape a little bit. I was watching some highlights. I mean, he's a physical, violent dude who's got some serious get-off. Right, and he makes plays in the backfield beyond just getting to the quarterback. We talk about that a lot as far as the versatility of an edge rusher. I don't want my edge rusher to be a one-trick pony like Trey Hendrickson. Yeah, it was great when he was getting to the quarterback, but was he doing anything in the run game? No. Was he doing anything in the screen game? No. Was he setting the edge? God, no. Right? So I think a guy like Boye Mafe has a little bit more versatility to his game, and the Bengals are paying a premium, certainly for Cincinnati Bengals standards, giving him $60 million, 3-year deal. And, hopefully it works out. Hopefully Shamar Stewart takes a step in the right direction. And then you definitely draft another one as well. And the next thing you know, you got a little stable of edge rushers, and we'll see what happens. But I think if you're a Bengals fan, you got to be fired up about what happened yesterday. And Duke Tobin deserves some credit here. There's always the argument of, well, you do something we've all been calling for, and it's super obvious. Do you deserve credit for that? I'll give him some credit, right? Did I expect them to go after Bryan Cook? Nope, I did not. Like, I thought they would get a safety, but I thought it would be more of like a Nick Cross, who I've seen some people out there that say they wanted him instead of Bryan Cook, which I don't understand that at all, but more of a mid-tier level guy. Like Bryan Cook, that's not a mid-tier free agent. That is the best safety that was on the market, and he's coming home to Cincinnati, which is really exciting. So Duke Tobin at the Combine said, quote, "We have resources to attack the offseason in a big way, and we want to do that." This isn't the first time he's talked like that, spoke like that, right? I think he said it. It's like, it sounds great, Duke, but I think we all kind of rolled our eyes, laughed a little bit at him. They're being aggressive here, right? They had $50 million-ish in cap room to work with. Obviously, yesterday took a serious chunk of that, but there's still room to make some serious acquisitions here today and even going into the later parts of next week there as well. So my biggest takeaway from yesterday, got off to a rocky start. I think some PTSD clicked in, and I started thinking about them not doing anything. And then they proved us wrong as they get Bryan Cook and they get Boye Mafe. And from here, I think there's a couple of different avenues in which they could go. I think, a combo linebacker is huge, right? There's a couple of names that we'll talk about here in a second at that position, and then interior defensive line, right? And we'll talk about that a little bit as it relates to the NFL draft. Again, that JFM was that guy. Logan Hall's kind of that next guy who, as we're doing this live, is still available. But beyond that, what do you do at that spot? So those are the next two boxes that need to be checked for the Cincinnati Bengals. But Duke Tobin, he was awake, right? Thought he was asleep at the wheel there for a second, but made some big-time moves yesterday for the Bengals. And the division was making moves too, right? I mean, think about what happened with Max Crosby over the weekend. Is Boye Mafe and Bryan Cook, are they Max Crosby? Obviously not. But from a psyche perspective, you couldn't just afford to sit on your hands here when the division's making moves. And Pittsburgh, by the way, got better yesterday too. So it was good to see Cincinnati be aggressive, do a little bit of legal tampering, right, and go after some other names there as well. Let's talk about some of the best available guys. Again, we're doing this live here, so if you're listening later in podcast form and a signing is made, check in again tomorrow and we'll talk about it. But it's that combo linebacker and an interior defensive lineman. Not a perfect player either way that's currently available, but still some very solid players that are available. Logan Hall is a guy that we talked about a lot on the interior, played out his rookie contract in Tampa, was a second-round pick. Did the production equate to that necessarily? No. The traits are there. He's big. He can be a run stuffer. Also has some pass rush upside, I'll say, there as well. So I think Logan Hall is a name that we'd all be excited if they brought him in. The two linebackers, Kaden Elliss and Leo Chenal. Gauging the fan base, it seems like Chenal is the guy people would prefer. I personally would go with Kaden Elliss. I just love the upside as far as getting home to the quarterback, wrecking the game, right? We just haven't seen that in Cincinnati for forever, right? I mean, when it was Trey Hendrickson, it was Trey Hendrickson or nothing, right, as far as the pass rush goes. But now all of a sudden, if you can get a linebacker that can get after the quarterback, and you saw the flashes from Myles Murphy, you just got Boye Mafe, all of a sudden you might be cooking a little bit here. But I like Kaden Elliss a lot from Atlanta, one of the most underrated linebackers in the league. We'll see what his market looks like. it was interesting because some of these linebackers didn't get as much money as I thought. Devin Lloyd was, $15 million a year, 45 for 3 years, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, which apparently late last night the reports were circulating around that there was like 3 teams in the mix for Devin Lloyd. The Bengals were one of them. He ultimately decides to go to Carolina. I mean, that would have been a huge get. If you didn't have Bryan Cook, I think we'd all be frustrated by that. Maybe some people out there are still frustrated by that. But I was kind of surprised about the market for some of these linebackers. And Quay Walker didn't get a ton of money either from the Las Vegas Raiders. So they can get one of these guys maybe at a cheaper deal. Demario Davis is a guy that I had talked about a lot, 37 years old. Well, he was kind of the opposite, right? For a guy that was that old, I thought he got maybe a little bit too much money for the New York Jets, but had an experience playing there. He goes back there. And I can't imagine signing with the New York Jets in free agency, but I also can't imagine making $14 million. So maybe that had something to do with it. But those are the 2 top linebackers, Kaden Elliss, Leo Chenal. We'll see what direction the Bengals go in there. Bobby Wagner is still available. He was kind of that other veteran guy. I don't think he'll get as much as Demario Davis. I do think he's actually younger than Demario Davis, so maybe he does. But just watching them on the football field last year, I thought Davis was playing much better despite being a little bit older. We'll see. I think we'd all be, happy with Bobby Wagner coming in here. I think he's one of those guys, auto C on the chest, right, if he walks in that door. Bobby Wagner. Another guy on the interior, Sebastian Joseph Day, right, played for Tennessee. I think the expectations for him were a little bit higher just because he has the size, the strength, and also some athleticism there as well. But I don't know if he'll sign today or not, but I think there's some upside with Sebastian Joseph there. I would like to just see another guy get in the room there along the interior defensive line, even if you miss out on Logan Hall. Let's add a piece. Obviously, you're going to need to draft one at some point as well, but let's just kind of add a new fresh body into the mix here. I don't know if the Bengals are necessarily done at edge, because when we were doing our mock-off season, I had them just getting one edge in free agency and then ultimately drafting one as well. But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities for them to get another one of these edge rushers, right? Bosa is still out there, a 1 year, $9 or $10 million deal. I think that could become, a realistic situation for the Cincinnati Bengals. Arnold Ebiketie, as we're doing this live, still available from the Atlanta Falcons, and that was kind of that second tier guy that I wanted. I wanted Draymond Jones. I was like, if you can't get Draymond Jones, I like Arnold Ebiketie. Bengals surprised me a little bit by going out and paying for Boye Mafe, but I think Ebiketie could potentially be a guy still on the board. And then, Cam Jordan, right? It's Demario Davis. He left New Orleans. He hadn't played his entire career in New Orleans, but I think there's a world where Cam Jordan will leave, explore other avenues, try to get a ring, and, you know what you have offensively here in Cincinnati, and if you're a free agent looking around saying, well, they've addressed the defense here, they've made a couple of nice signings, maybe I'll, dip my foot in the water and try to go out to the Queen City and see what I could do, and maybe Cam Jordan could be another name that is available for the Bengals. Danico Autry, a guy that we talked about some with Goodberry last week. Interior defensive lineman. He's older, not nearly as athletic as he used to be, but still has some pass rush upside. I think 1 year, $4 million, something like that, $5 million. He's not going to get an expensive contract. There are a few other guys that I would rather target than him, but let's just not just assume that Jenkins and McKinley Jackson are going to make some crazy leap next year, right? Let's add a veteran to that room. You're keeping B.J. Hill, or you keeping T.J. Slayton. I don't know. As time goes on, kind of feels like they're keeping both, which do have my concerns there. We can applaud him for addressing the edge rusher spot and the safety spot, but we don't want that interior to still be Chris Jenkins, McKinley Jackson, B.J. Hill, and T.J. Slayton, right? We did that last year, and we saw how that went, and that was not good. So I would still like to get another new body into the mix there for the Cincinnati Bengals. But we'll see. We'll continue to have you updated here at the channel. We'll do a little quick look at Twitter here as we're doing this live. Dawson Knox is staying in Buffalo. No news for the Cincinnati Bengals here at this point, but Dawson Knox staying in Buffalo makes sense. Feels like he's always been a security blanket for Josh Allen, and keeping him in Buffalo, I think, makes a lot of sense for the Buffalo Bills. But we'll continue to have it updated here at the show if anything comes in while we're live here for the next 25 minutes or so. But I think if you're the Cincinnati Bengals, great day one. They surprised me with the Bryan Cook thing, and they honestly surprised me with the Boye Mafe thing. I'm not surprised they liked Boye Mafe, but to dish out $60 million when there was a couple other guys. Like I mentioned, Draymond Jones, he went for 39. The Bengals said, no, we want to go a little bit younger than that. We want to be aggressive, and we want a guy that was a part of winning a world championship. And I love that. I think that's a good habit to get into. Doesn't mean that they're going to necessarily be able to bring that to Cincinnati, but guys that have played in the postseason, have won in the postseason, and that is the expectation. Those are the type of guys I want around Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase in this locker room, if I'm being completely honest with you. So good day one for the Bengals. We'll see what happens here day two. Let's go around the league a little bit with some of these other moves. Depending on the year, sometimes it's like, that kind of wasn't good. And I wouldn't say I had super high expectations coming into free agency this year, but yesterday was awesome, right? There was all kinds of moves being made, a couple of star players leaving, going to different spots. And let's just start here with quarterback. Malik Willis is going to the Miami Dolphins. I just think in life, right, forget football, but just in life, a story like this is pretty cool. Right. Malik Willis, he was in that bad quarterback class with him and Kenny Pickett, and that was it. And then he slid a little bit. He was talked about as could he go in the first round, and then ultimately that didn't end up happening. He goes to Tennessee, and he just wasn't ready. He was a raw guy, right? He played at Liberty, and no disrespect to Liberty, but he went from Liberty to the NFL, and that's a pretty significant jump, right? That's not going from Georgia to the NFL, right? As going from Liberty to the NFL. And, he didn't really get a ton of opportunity there in Tennessee. Why? Probably because he was so bad in practice that they couldn't even throw him out there. And, a lot of games he wasn't even dressed, and it didn't work out in Tennessee. And he goes to Green Bay, which if you're a quarterback in the NFL and things don't go well for you immediately, and you're on to your next spots, Green Bay is one of the top places that you could go. Right? Green Bay, the Rams with McVay, the Niners with Shanahan, just all the gurus that we talk about, the LaFleurs of the world, the Shanahans, the O'Connells of the world. That's a great spot for you to go. And he went there. He learned. Sat behind a great quarterback in Jordan Love, who I think is unbelievable. For whatever reason, some people hesitate a little bit to crown him yet, but I think Jordan Love is absolutely the real deal. He sits behind him, and he works with Matt LaFleur, and Love's had some injury issues. Now, his are a little bit different. It's not like Joe Burrow where he misses the year or a huge chunk of the year. It's like just games here and there, and he had to come in and play. In year one, doing that, coming in for Jordan Love, you're looking around like, okay, Malik Willis, he can play a little bit. And then same thing happened this past year in 2025 where he had to go in, and it's like they're still winning, right? They're just, lost their franchise quarterback, but they're keeping this thing moving. And he did a really nice job. And ultimately in those few games that he got to go in and play, he earned himself a ton of money. I think the big one really was the Bear game. If you remember that, it was freezing cold. I think it was in Chicago. That may have been the game winner from DJ Moore in the end zone. I do believe it was. In Chicago when Jordan Love just got smacked right in the face and kind of got KO'd in that game. And Malik Willis had to come in, and it wasn't like one of those situations where he knew he was going to be the starter and got the prep like the starter all week. Like, he just had to come in and go. And definitely the style of offense changed a little bit. It was a lot more run heavy, but clearly he knew what he was doing. And he was able to put Green Bay in a really good spot, give them an opportunity to win. Playing in the cold like that, which obviously he's not going to have to do that in South Beach for the majority of the year, but just knowing he can do that come playoff time, especially for the Dolphins, considering what they had in Tua Tagovailoa, that's got to be refreshing for them. And the character, there was never character issues with Malik Willis. It was always like he was a great kid. We're all rooting for him. It just didn't quite work out. And he's got some traits. He's got some mobility. He's got some athleticism. He does have a big arm there as well. And clearly there was already a relationship in place. And it makes a lot of sense, right, with what Hafley and John Eric Sullivan, these guys are doing. Right, they were in Green Bay, right? They've got about 2 or 3 years max, but this day and age in the NFL, like, they can't just go out there and stink here in year one, so they want to do what's comfortable for them. And I think it was a great decision by Miami to marry those two guys. They were already together in Green Bay. John Eric Sullivan, the new GM, and Jeff Hafley, defensive coordinator at the time, they come into Miami. Why not get Malik Willis? Right, you were just around him for a couple of years, right? He came in, clearly knew how to play. Quarterback draft is very weak. Would you rather go with him or, hope to get a guy like Ty Simpson? Probably you go with Malik Willis, right? And clearly there was a relationship there, and you just feel good because, when he leaves Tennessee and goes to Green Bay, you're like, well, if things don't work out in Green Bay, he's on his way to working in a cubicle, becoming a salesman, right? But instead, he gets a huge payday and generational wealth for his family, right? I mean, $60+ million? Like, he's good, right? If he's spends his money wisely and, puts it in the right spots, what have you, he's good. I mean, his kids are good too. So it's just a feel-good story, I think. Do I think the Dolphins are going to win the division? Do I think they're going to win a ton of games? No, but I think they'll be formidable. Right, I think Hafley's going to be a really good coach. They have a lot of work to do on that roster as they're just completely overhauling their team. They made the decision basically like Acham, Waddle, we're going to keep you boys, but everything else is, we're rebuilding. You look at that defense, they got Chop Robinson, and that is literally it for the Miami Dolphins. So that's going to really test Jeff Hafley to see what he's capable of for them. The offensive coordinator obviously going to have to get on the same page with Malik Willis and see what he can do, but that's what happens when you have an opportunity as a backup and you execute. A payday can come your way, especially when the draft is really weak. And that's kind of where things are at here for Malik Willis. So congrats to him. Feel good story. We'll see how he does in Miami. Pretty good day to be Tua Tagovailoa, I would say. Obviously, he's got to be frustrated, a little heartbroken, whatever, that it didn't work out in Miami with the Dolphins, the team that drafted him. But they are still paying him. And they still owe him over $50 million. And on top of that, he's going to get $1 million from the Atlanta Falcons. And the way things ended in Miami, obviously he got benched. That wasn't great. You knew he was going to get another opportunity. But I think, I certainly was sitting here thinking like, it looks like the Jets or the Cardinals, right? And you put Tua on the Jets or the Cardinals, you got issues. You got serious, serious issues. But instead, he gets to go to Atlanta, right? Which is... that is best case scenario for Tua Tagovailoa. So, 1-year deal with the Falcons. Worst division in football. Saints are trending. Bucks always going to be feisty with Baker. They're a well-run operation with Jason Light, the GM. And the Panthers, obviously, were in the playoffs. So, maybe this year won't be the worst division. But I still think it might be. You play indoors, right, in Atlanta, which is something Tua needs. We know what it's like outdoors when it gets cold for Mr. Tagovailoa there. And an offensive-minded coach. And Kevin Stefanski, who a lot of people seemingly in NFL circles think is like this great head coach. I hesitate a little bit. I do think it was a mistake for Cleveland to get rid of him. I do think he was a bit of a scapegoat there in that situation. But as far as him being in the same category as guys like Kyle Shanahan or Kevin O'Connell or Sean McVay, God forbid, I think that's ridiculous. But he gets to be partnered with, what people in the NFL would say is an offensive genius. And I question Stefanski's evaluation of quarterbacks a little bit. You look with some of these guys that he's worked with, and, the Gabriel pick is like, what are you doing? Great college quarterback, but a third-round NFL pick? I don't get it. And, Tua is kind of like the souped-up version of Dylan Gabriel. Obviously, it's an easy comparison because they're both left-handed, but they're both undersized. I think Tua's a better distributor and I would say makes better decisions, but there at the end in Miami, he was not making good decisions. So, I don't know. I kind of question that a little bit from Stefanski, but if you're Tua, sign me up. You get to play with a top 10 player in football in Bijan Robinson. You got Drake London there on the outside, Kyle Pitts on the franchise tag. They've got pieces on defense. Again, you're indoors, weak division. Sure, sign me up. Now, is he going to beat out Michael Penix is the question. I would think that Atlanta is going to roll with Michael Penix, but Penix is coming off that injury, right? So Tua's going to get a ton of offseason snaps, and he's going to put himself in a position, if he balls out, which something tells me he might, to potentially steal that job from Michael Penix. So that's kind of funny, the two lefties in the same spot there in Atlanta, and we'll see how that shakes out. But if you're Tua, you're getting paid $50+ million from the Dolphins, and then you get to go to a situation with an offensive-minded coach, Kevin Stefanski, solid roster, weak division, indoors. Come on. He's got to be just smiling ear to ear right now and getting an additional $1 million from the Atlanta Falcons. So for a while there, it looked like Jets or Cardinals for him, but it looks like it's going to be the Atlanta Falcons, and Tua gets a fresh start there in Atlanta. The Las Vegas Raiders, they were active, and I talked about this a little bit earlier in the show. I think there's a fine line as far as how you should approach free agency in the National Football League. The teams on a historical basis that are just super aggressive and just spend a ton of money doesn't typically work out as far as getting to the playoffs and making a run. Also, if you have a team that just doesn't address free agency at all, doesn't dip their toe at all, that doesn't work out either. Usually it's kind of a fine balance, right? You don't want to just make your whole roster through free agency, but you also want to tap into it a little bit. Like the Bengals, to this point here, are doing a nice job of that. The Raiders are seriously aggressive, right? They paid a premium for this Tyler Linderbaum center, who's a great center, was a really good center in Baltimore. He hits free agency, 3 years, $81 million, just completely reset the center market. Creed Humphrey was in the teens, and this guy's making $27 million a year. And Creed Humphrey was the highest paid center before that, and he was in the teens. So it's like that just completely blew it out of the water. And centers out there should be thanking Tyler Linderbaum and the Raiders for years to come. But look, I love value in center when you're bringing in a young quarterback, right? Fernando Mendoza's coming in, and they're already like building around Mendoza, and he's not even in the building yet, right, for the Las Vegas Raiders. But getting him a center, right, there's constant communication between the center and the quarterback. Obviously, when you're under center, you're there, with each other on every single play, and you're snapping it to him every single play. So the center-quarterback relationship, especially for a rookie, is huge. They valued it, and if you're going to get a guy like Tyler Linderbaum, and it's funny that Trey Hendrickson is not yet signed, but I think going into free agency, people are like, the two top names here are Linderbaum and Hendrickson, right? And when you have a position like that in free agency where you're the most highly coveted guy and you're coming off a rookie contract, like you're going to get a ton of money. And that's exactly what Tyler Linderbaum did, is he cashed in. And, if it works out for Vegas, great. But if he's not like the best center in the league or a top 3-4 center in the league, it's going to look pretty bad. But I respect them valuing, hey, we need a really good center to come in here and help with our young quarterback. Also, they spent a ton of money on their defense. So you would think that they're going to be, again, formidable this year. Are they going to be a playoff team? No, but a lot of that, of course, comes down to their quarterback, Mendoza. But adding the two linebackers and the Kobe Dean and Quay Walker, a couple of Georgia guys, they're in on 3-year deals, I believe. Good football players, but, you paid them. You're paying them. You're overpaying them, right? That's how free agency works. And they addressed other areas to their defense there as well. So teams like the Titans and the Raiders are spending high money on a lot of different positions on their team. And, again, when you do it in free agency, you're paying a tax on these guys. So you're overpaying all of these guys, but we'll see if it works out. I can respect the aggression. Clearly, Tom Brady is coming in there saying, all right, we're not doing this anymore. Like, if we're going down, we're going to go down swinging. And him and Johnny Spytek made a ton of moves yesterday, and ultimately we'll see how it works out for Vegas. But the Linderbaum deal is fascinating because that just blew the center market out of the water. And if you're a center looking at that, you're so excited that the market increased by that. Like, you knew he was going to get more than Creed Humphrey, but from the teens, I think Creed was like 17, don't quote me on that, to like 27, that's an absurd jump there when it comes to that. Alec Pierce. I question Chris Ballard a little bit in that operation there in Indianapolis. When you make a huge swing like they did at the deadline and you basically go all in on Daniel Jones, I understand he got hurt. A lot of that's not within his control. But they went all in with Daniel Jones when they got out to a great start to the season, and they moved 2 first-round picks for a corner, right? Not 2 first-round picks for an edge rusher, right? 2 first-round picks for a corner in Sauce Gardner, who is a good corner, right? He was the top pick in the draft. We all know him here in Cincinnati. Great player, and maybe he'll bounce back from his injury and he'll be a great player. But when you take a swing like that and the guy gets hurt, you just sit there and you look kind of like a fool, right? Again, how could they have predicted he would get hurt? I totally get it. Fair. But now you're in a really difficult spot if you're the Colts. And it kind of feels like a panicky situation where they're like, well, we got Pittman here. We got Pierce. Probably only going to be able to keep one of them. We let, Pierce get the free agency, which that's a Bengal move, right? They could have addressed this a couple of weeks prior. But Pierce did come out and say he wanted to hit free agency and test it a little bit. So I guess that does make sense to some degree. But they're paying Alec Pierce 4 years, $116 million. Alec Pierce is a really good player. He's a complete player, but he's getting paid like a 1 now. So he's going to have to catch a heck of a lot more than he has over the course of the past few years. I have belief that he can do it, but, 4 years, $116 million. Hello, that is a payday for Alec Pierce. And subsequently, they end up having to move off Michael Pittman, save money there certainly against the cap, trade him to Pittsburgh, which that impacts Cincinnati. We're all sitting here making fun of Pittsburgh and their roster, rightfully so. Now all of a sudden, DK Metcalf and Michael Pittman, that ain't Jamar Chase and D. Higgins, but they're not just a couple of bums, right? So that's a huge addition for Pittsburgh, getting Michael Pittman, and he signs an extension there as well. So Alec Pierce is going to have to catch more balls, and he's going to have to be more of a complete player. I think he's more of a downfield big play specialist throughout the course of his career to this point. You're going to have to see a lot more from him in the intermediate route tree, right, as far as increasing that part of his game. And we'll see who's throwing the ball. I mean, Daniel Jones, I would say, is going to be the guy for at least 1 year after placing the transition tag on him. But good for him, Cincinnati kid. Cincinnati alum, 4 years, $116 million, huge payday for Alec Pierce. I question what the Colts are doing a little bit, but they're in a spot where it's like, well, we don't have, like, they had to sign a receiver in free agency, right? They lost 2 first-round picks. Like, they needed to, bring in a receiver, and in their eyes, it probably makes a lot more sense to just keep a guy they already had in Alec Pierce. Kenneth Walker, 3 years, $43 million with the Kansas City Chiefs. I think you got to be careful with some of these players because you look at the postseason and you look at the Super Bowl. The guy won the Super Bowl MVP, and you go, yeah, give him a ton of money. What are you doing? Well, I think you got to look at, when you're paying out these contracts, yeah, it's great. He balled out in the postseason. It's huge. Great, he's Super Bowl MVP. That made him a ton of money because I don't know if Kenneth Walker is a 3-year, $43 million running back, honestly. If I'm paying a running back that much money, I want him to be a threat out of the backfield. And again, I talked about this at the top of the show. You look at the stats, and it's like, yeah, well, he caught the ball out of the backfield for Seattle. But is he, Alvin Kamara or a guy like Jeremiah Love coming out, Bijan Robinson, Christian McCaffrey? No, he's not. He is a run-first guy. He's an in-between-the tackles guy. Obviously, he's got great speed. He can get to the outside too. But as far as the short passing game with Andy Reid going to Kenneth Walker, I don't know. I don't know if that's going to work out for them. And there were moments early in his career in Seattle where you're like, I don't know if that looks like the guy that we saw at Michigan State, right? And, I would never give a running back this much money at this stage of his career, right? That's just – maybe that's unfair to say to running backs, right? And unless you're Christian McCaffrey or Bijan Robinson. There's a few – or Jahmyr Gibbs here coming down the pike. There's a few exceptions. But, I mean, Kenneth Walker, great run in the playoffs, great Super Bowl. He ain't Jahmyr Gibbs. He ain't Christian McCaffrey. He ain't Bijan Robinson, right? And $43 million is a lot. So we'll see. I think Kansas City said, well, we're not getting Jeremiah Love at 9. Let's get this guy. Assuming they lose Pacheco too. He's a free agent. But I don't know. Brett Veach, Andy Reid, those boys, they know what they're doing. But I don't know if I'm on board with this move, to be completely honest with you. But obviously, the Cincinnati Bengals will take it. You want to overpay for a running back? Go right ahead. Mike Evans, San Francisco. They need to be a little bit more active. I was thinking they would address their defense a little bit more. I think they should. We'll see if they do today. But awesome. Mike Evans to the Niners. It's just tough, man. You don't see these stories often anymore about guys just playing for one team. Like, it's just, you look at Mike Evans and you think he's just a Tampa Bay Buccaneer to his core. And I would imagine he'll retire a Buc someday. But he wanted to test the waters in free agency. They had a good roster there in Tampa. You can win in Tampa right now with Baker. You can. In that division, maybe he doesn't trust his head coach, Todd Bowles. I don't know. But I can totally see why San Francisco would be intriguing, right? You look at they're a team that wins every single year, regardless of all the injuries that they have, and you're trying to get them that first championship, right? They've been in these huge games, but just haven't quite been able to get over the hump. Mike Evans probably feels like he can be that guy. If you're Brock Purdy, you're ecstatic here. Obviously, we'll see about Kittle coming back from the Achilles, but you got McCaffrey, you got Kittle, right? You got Pearsall, who's great when he's out there, but he's not really available. I think the concern for the Niners, as always, is health, because it feels like they've been hurt every year for the past 5 years, and you're adding a guy with a weak hamstring, right, in Mike Evans, and he's an older veteran player, so I think this could blow up in their face. But if you get a healthy Mike Evans, you got a dog right there, and you pair him with Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle. That's some serious pieces right there. So I think a bit of a concern from an age perspective, but I absolutely love this move. I've been a huge Mike Evans guy for a long, long time. I think he's the most underrated player of my generation, to be completely honest with you. He's a certified dog. And when you're competing in a division, with Seattle and Los Angeles, right, you need to add as far as to your room and what you're capable of doing offensively. And that is exactly what the San Francisco 49ers did, bringing in Mike Evans. I absolutely love it for Kyle Shanahan. Talking about Pittsburgh here a little bit to round out kind of this segment. They made some additions. I would much rather be the Cincinnati Bengals and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And candidly, it is not close. They got an old roster. Omar Khan, I question what in the world he is doing, right? They have paid too much money on defense and then have not had a good defense, right? If you're going to pay more money on defense than offense, you better have a really good defense. TJ Watt's a really good player. They haven't had a really good defense in several years. They made some good moves yesterday addressing their offense. Michael Pittman, he gets traded to Pittsburgh. Touched on this already. Pairing him with DK Metcalf. That ain't Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, but also it's a lot better than what they were rolling with last year. Michael Pittman's a really, really good receiver. Right, he has versatility as far as what he can do. He can do the dirty work over the middle, absorb contact, take shots. He was a really good player in Indianapolis. I like that move for Pittsburgh. Also, Rico Dowdle, right? He kind of got cast away in Dallas, and it was kind of like, why are they just kind of letting him go? Had a huge year in Carolina in it last year. Absolutely exploded. And Pittsburgh lost, arguably, their best player on offense, Kenny Gainwell. He goes to Tampa, so they had to fill that void a little bit. They bring in Rico Dowdle to pair him with Jaylen Warren. And I think that's a great acquisition for Pittsburgh there as well. The question, of course, is what to do at quarterback. My gut tells me right now Aaron Rodgers is going to be back. We'll see. I'm sure he's going to take some time here. He's not going to, he was on McAfee saying they hadn't been offered a contract yet. I don't know. It's just kind of the Aaron Rodgers experience. My gut says he'll be their quarterback for week 1 next year, but we'll see. Ultimately, we'll see. But they made some adjustments. They improved on offense, and I think for Aaron Rodgers seeing this, getting Michael Pittman in itself is just like, okay, that might be a reason to come back, as they just didn't have enough weapons on offense last year, and that was very, very obvious. But those are some of the big moves. I think Evans to San Fran's a big winner, but you got the injury history and the age. Feels like San Francisco has kind of been an old team for several years now, but I think there's a lot of upside there. The Raiders, I credit them for being aggressive, but when you're that aggressive as the Raiders and the Titans are in free agency day one, I don't know if that always equates to postseason success. That's kind of the proof is just kind of in the pudding there, to be completely honest with you. Tua, not very many happier people in the world right now than Tua Tagovailoa, getting all the money from Miami and gets to go to about as good of a landing spot as he could have hoped with the Atlanta Falcons. Good for Malik Willis. We'll see how it works out, but he gets a big payday. Good for Duke Tobin, right? Not falling asleep at the wheel, executing in day one, and we'll see ultimately what day 2 can bring here for the Cincinnati Bengals. Bearcats, by the way, in action this afternoon, 3 o'clock, ESPN+. Wes Miller, the fellas, taking on Utah. They beat Utah in a close game a couple of weeks ago. They got to win this game, right? And, we've had the conversations about Wes and his job security. Ultimately, I think that decision has been made, right, by Cunningham and whoever else is making that call for Cincinnati. Regardless of what happens here throughout the, this tournament and potentially after that, I think the decision has been made. What that decision is, I don't know. You got to beat Utah, and to be honest with you got to beat UCF, right? And if you beat Utah, you beat UCF. And then you get the doors blown off you by Arizona, you're probably going to be a last 4 out or a next 4 out, right? I don't imagine that's going to be enough to get in. We'll see. Do have a couple of huge wins, huge quad 1 wins for Cincinnati, but, frustrating that they were on the cusp in just one game here or there. Again, you beat Eastern Michigan, you beat Xavier, right? You had great opportunities against Tech and TCU down the stretch. If you win one of those games, you're probably safe. But I think Cincinnati's going to need to go on a 3-game run here, and one of those games would be against Arizona, and I don't know, right? I don't know if that's something the UC Bearcats are capable of doing, but got to get back to your roots and get back to where you had success before the TCU game. Baba and Mustafa got to play better. You run your offense through them. I need Mustafa to be a little more physical and tough down low. He had shown that for several weeks, and then just had a bad game against TCU. And they're not good enough as a team for him and Baba, their 2 best players, to have a bad game in a game as critical as that one was against TCU. Got to shoot it well from the outside. JC has been shooting it well. Day shot it well, one of the lone bright spots of the TCU game. But take care of the basketball, right? I mean, take care of the basketball. The turnovers, 20 of them, 19, whatever the case it was, against TCU. It's just you can't win when you turn it over that many times, right? In this conference, in this league, you can't do that, right? If we're being completely honest. But let's do another check here. The Don't see anything as it relates to the Cincinnati Bengals here at this point. By the way, great WBC game last night. The Americans, they took down Mexico. Roman Anthony, I mean, holy Moses. That dude can play. 21 years old. He's going to have a huge year for Boston. Skeens, disgusting. He only threw like 4 innings, had like 7 Ks, 1 hit, a walk maybe. But that guy's the best player in baseball, not named Shohei Ohtani. That was incredible. How about Bobby Witt Jr. flashing the leather there at shortstop? 2 just total web gem plays and in the same game. Like, I don't know if he'll make plays that good throughout his whole year in Kansas City. And he's capable of doing it, but it's just like, I mean, they were just ridiculous plays from Bobby Witt Jr. Big win for the Americans. They're 3-0, the World Baseball Classic. That's been fun. You know, I've always watched it a little bit, but I've been more engaged, more tapped in this year. And, I mean, the roster is absolutely loaded, so it's hard not to tap in a little bit. But seeing Skeens out there, I mean, that dude is disgusting. That guy's absolutely foul. But Americans 3-0. Keep you updated here if the Bengals make any more moves. Hopefully a Kaden Elliss, a Leo Chenal, a Logan Hall, some guys that I believe are all still on the board as we're sitting here at noon on a Tuesday. But hopefully they can continue to add here. I don't think they're done. I hope they're not done. They need to get a linebacker, get an interior defensive lineman, and then turn the page for the NFL draft next month in April. But appreciate everyone, as always, for being here. Again, we're here every single day, Monday through Friday. Viewership's been great the past 2 days. Subscribe to the channel, Chatterbox Sports. Follow me on Twitter at StoneShields_. Follow the show at the Stone Shields every single day, every single weekday, 11 to noon. We're here live on the channel, regardless of where we're at in free agency or the NFL season or the MLB season. We'll be here. So tap in every single day. Would greatly appreciate that. And also check out the podcast if you are unable to watch live, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, IR, you name it. Just type in the Stone Shield Show. Leave us a 5-star review. It really does go a long way. So we got some exciting stuff here coming down the pike at the show. But appreciate everyone as always. Till tomorrow, take care, everybody.